If you follow WNBA news, you've probably seen the headlines. Lexie Hull is speaking candidly about the Indiana Fever's mid-season turmoil and the veteran exit that blindsided the locker room. What she's sharing lands like a gut punch, especially for a young team built on trust, accountability, and a shared vision. Before we get into the details, jump into the comments with your take, show some support for Lexie Hull for being open about a tough situation, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a breakdown of the biggest stories in women's basketball. Let's start with context. Hull's rise with the Indiana Fever has been marked by grit and resilience. She recently drew national attention with a glamour feature spotlighting her as a ride-or-die teammate, the kind of player who takes charges, hits the floor for loose balls, and absorbs contact without blinking. Fever fans won't forget the viral image of Hull with two black eyes after a game at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, still competing, still smiling, still doing the dirty work. That visual became a shorthand for how much she's willing to sacrifice for team success. On the court, the Fever have been on an accelerated curve since Caitlin Clark arrived, with Aaliyah Boston anchoring the interior, Kelsey Mitchell providing veteran scoring, and Hull giving them real two-way minutes on the wing. The one thing they were hunting for was a proven championship voice to stabilize close games and model the day-to-day discipline of a title run. That's why the arrival of a decorated veteran wing, Bonner, felt like a missing piece. It wasn't just a notable signing, it was a statement. The organization believed it had found the perfect balance of youthful firepower and veteran presence. Hull admits she was genuinely thrilled to have a mentor at her position who had been there and done it under playoff lights. In her words, it felt rare and invaluable, precisely the kind of teammate who could fast-track the Fever's growth curve. Early practices had a new snap to them. Younger players hung on the veterans' words. The message in those first weeks was clear. Big goals require big habits, and this group was ready to adopt both. But as the season wore on, the energy shifted. According to Hull, subtle signs emerged that something wasn't right. There were days when the veteran was fully engaged, and others when the connection just wasn't there. It didn't look like a disagreement. It felt more like a drift, hard to define in the moment, easy to recognize in hindsight. Hull says she trusted that a player of that stature would push through whatever was happening behind the scenes. The Fever's culture is built on grace plus accountability, and the locker room extended both. Then came the day that changed everything. Players reported like usual, taped up, laced up, and took the floor for practice. Only this time, something was off immediately. Whispered questions turned into long looks toward the door. Where was Bonner? Had something happened? Was there a team meeting no one had heard about? Hull describes the session that followed as hollow, reps without rhythm, a routine without clarity. There was no announcement, no explanation, no heads up. Just absence. The younger core felt the confusion most acutely. Clark and Boston, who had invested heavily in building a relationship with their veteran teammate, wondered quietly if they had done something wrong. Hull says she found herself reassuring peers who thought they might have missed a cue or crossed a line. It wasn't that. It wasn't them. But no one with decision-making authority could answer the most basic question. What was happening? In the days that followed, the Fever kept waiting for a message, a meeting, any form of communication that would anchor the moment and allow the group to move forward as professionals. When it didn't come, disappointment turned into disillusionment. Hull is measured but firm here. The lack of communication felt deeply unprofessional for a player of that caliber, not because the team couldn't adapt on the floor, but because respect inside a locker room is built on conversation, especially when things are hard. The dominoes fell quickly. Rotations the staff had spent weeks refining were back on the whiteboard. Roles shifted overnight. Hull's minutes swung for stretches as the team recalibrated. Meanwhile, the front office had to assess its options in real time, an unwelcome curveball during a playoff push. If you followed the Fever's rebuild, you know how meticulous they've been in constructing a culture that values transparency. As Hull frames it, this felt like the inverse of that ideal. While the Fever focused on stabilizing, outside noise turned into a storm. Social media speculated about tampering, with screenshots and receipts circulating that fans claimed pointed to long-term recruitment by Phoenix. A comment from Mercury head coach Nate Tibbetts in a separate availability, acknowledging their desire to add another veteran and how much they valued prior relationships, only intensified the conversation. To be clear, as of this recording, the league has not announced any findings, and no formal ruling on tampering has been made public. These remain allegations and interpretations from the outside looking in. Still, the discourse took on a life of its own, and it undeniably filtered back to the Fever locker room. Hull's frustration isn't performative. It's rooted in what she believed the team was building. Indiana's blueprint has been straightforward: recruit honestly, develop internally, and create a place people want to stay. When a veteran exit happens without a conversation, and when league chatter suggests other organizations might have been angling behind the scenes, it lands like a betrayal of that process. Again, this is Hull's perspective, and she's careful to speak from her experience. But her message is unmistakable. A young team was looking for a mentor and got a lesson in business instead. The most compelling part of this story, though, isn't the controversy, it's the response. Hull says that once the initial shock passed, the Fever turned inward and doubled down on who they are. Clark set the tone, organizing extra work, becoming more vocal in team huddles, and bringing urgency to film sessions. You could see a shift from rising star to floor general, the kind of leadership jump that changes the ceiling for a franchise. Aaliyah Boston's growth was just as striking. Early in the season, she leaned on veteran guidance to navigate game-to-game adjustments. After the departure, Boston's voice got louder, her presence steadier. She started pulling younger teammates aside, sharing reads, and calling out coverages on the fly. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just consistent, clear, and respected. Kelsey Mitchell kept the offense moving and reminded everyone what accountability looks like in crunch time. And Hull herself, never one to chase headlines, became an emotional anchor, organizing team dinners, checking on teammates, and making sure the locker room felt like a safe place to be frustrated, then focused. That cohesion showed up immediately on the court. The Fever played with a sharper edge, diving on the floor, helping the helper on defense, and celebrating the small plays that create big runs. The bench unit gave them real lift, and role players who had been waiting for their moment seized it. You could feel a new identity setting in, tougher, more connected, and less reliant on any single voice to set the tone. The results followed. Indiana started winning the kind of games young teams often drop, grinders that hinge on communication and trust. Hull also addressed something Fever fans have felt all year: the target on their back effect. When a franchise draws outsized attention, as Indiana has since Clark landed in Indianapolis, every arena gets louder, every opponent is a little more eager, and the margin for error shrinks. Hull didn't point fingers or suggest any conspiracy. She simply acknowledged what's obvious to anyone watching the WNBA right now. Spotlight brings pressure. Pressure brings resistance. And this group is learning to relish both. Back to the controversy for a moment, because it matters to the broader conversation about league standards. The accusations of tampering, again, unproven, sparked calls for transparency and clearer lines on recruitment etiquette. Hull's account underscores why those conversations are essential. Young cores are built on belief. When the line between interest and interference blurs, everyone loses. To be fair, players change teams, opportunities shift, plans evolve. Movement is part of the business and always will be. What Hull finds unacceptable is the silence, the absence of a professional exit, the open loop that left teammates personally questioning their own roles in a decision they didn't make and couldn't influence. It's also important to note what we don't know. The veteran at the center of this has not, to this point, offered a detailed public explanation addressing the timing and method of the departure. There may be personal or family considerations we aren't privy to. The responsible posture, always, is to hold space for that possibility. Still, from a team perspective, Hull's ask is simple and reasonable: communicate. Even a brief conversation would have spared teammates the confusion and collective second-guessing that followed. Meanwhile, the Fever's internal response has reshaped their identity. Without a veteran to lean on, the core four of Clark, Boston, Mitchell, and Hull matured in real time. Practices have a purpose. Game plans stick. Adjustments happen faster. And the locker room, by Hull's telling, feels lighter, more aligned, and more joyful. When your culture is intact, adversity doesn't fracture you, it forges you. Indiana has leaned into that truth. There's also a broader league takeaway here. The WNBA is in a growth spurt, ratings up, attendance booming, storylines hitting the national stage. With that growth comes scrutiny. Teams must be above reproach in how they approach players under contract elsewhere. Players, especially veterans, Know they are models for rookies and sophomores watching how they carry themselves. And media, yes, all of us who cover the league, should hold room for nuance, resist rush-to-judgment narratives, and be clear about what's confirmed and what's conjecture. As of today, there's no official tampering ruling tied to this situation. The allegations are just that, allegations. So where does this leave Indiana? In a surprisingly good place. Hull believes the Fever's championship window is opening, not closing, because of how they responded. If you watched their late-season push, you saw a team far more connected than they were in the spring. You saw Clark directing traffic like a seasoned point guard, Boston swallowing space at both ends and owning the paint, Mitchell calming late-game possessions, and Hull doing the hard jobs that win playoff games. If they keep that arc, 2026 isn't wishful thinking. It's a target they can prepare for with clear eyes. One last point that matters. Accountability cuts both ways. Hull's honesty is not a cheap shot. It's the kind of truth-telling that builds credibility. She did not name-call. She did not question anyone's character. She spoke about actions, impact, and expectations. If the veteran at the center of this chooses to share her perspective, it deserves to be heard. If Phoenix has a response regarding the speculation around recruitment, that deserves daylight too. Transparency helps the league. Silence leaves a vacuum that rumor happily fills. For Fever fans, this saga has been exhausting and clarifying. You wanted a blueprint for what your team stands for. You've got one now. It looks like communication. It looks like competing when it's messy. It looks like players stepping into leadership early because the moment demands it. It looks like a locker room that remembers what it felt like to be left in the dark and has decided never to leave each other there again. If you're new to the WNBA or just tuning in because the Fever have become appointment viewing, here's the bottom line. This is a young team growing up in public. They've faced controversy, injury, and the kind of league-wide attention that can warp a season. And instead of fracturing, they found a way to align. That's why this story matters beyond one exit or one player or one rumor cycle. It's a case study in how a franchise builds culture and protects it. We'll keep tracking developments, and if the veteran involved or the Mercury organization issues a detailed statement addressing the allegations or the timeline, we'll cover that with the same care. Until then, the most honest read is the one Hull gave us. The Fever were hurt by how this unfolded, they learned from it, and they came out stronger. Drop your thoughts below. Do you think the league needs tighter guardrails on recruitment and communication? Did Indiana handle the aftermath the right way? And how high is the ceiling for the core of Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, and Lexie Hull heading into the next 2 seasons? If you appreciate this kind of in-depth WNBA coverage, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It helps more fans find stories that deserve to be told. And most of all, show some love in the comments for Hull's candor and the Fever's resilience. This is going to be a fascinating off-season, and Indiana just made it clear they're building something real at Gainbridge Fieldhouse.